In January 2016, Pete Parsons took the helm as CEO of Bungie, marking the start of a series of bad decisions that would ruin the studio's once legendary reputation. This guy, who had been the chief operating officer, had witnessed all of the Halo years and seemed like a solid choice initially. However, in the years to come, it would be clear that his main focus was simply to line his own pockets before he retires, no matter the cost to Bungie or its employees. Parsons joined Bungie in 2002 from Microsoft and stayed with them through all of the Halo years and during the messy 10-year partnership with Activision, which began in 2010 and finally ended in 2020. Destiny, Bungie's flagship title, launched in 2014 and had a rocky development cycle, with Activision demanding rushed releases and major changes that led to many of the talented developers and other members of the team that worked on the Halo franchise leaving the studio. Many people throughout most of Destiny's lifecycle have blamed Activision for the majority of the bad decisions that have been made affecting the game, and many of the just complete misses that the studio has had were mostly blamed on interference from Activision. However, once Activision and Bungie split in 2020, many of these bad decisions still continued, and some of them even got worse under Parsons' sole leadership. Destiny, which would become the studio's new flagship title, received mixed reception on launch, and the first two expansions did not do much to help this. The Dark Below did bring about a second raid to the game. People did enjoy because the higher-end content was one of the few things the game was praised for off the launch, but Prison of Elders from the House of Wolves did end up receiving quite a bit of praise because it was just an interesting and unique activity, and it had quite a bit of replay value. The Taken King ended up coming out the following year and received universal acclaim and was considered the first time that the game was brought back from the dead. 6 months after the Taken King's launch, Pete Parsons took over as CEO of Bungie. Rise of Iron was announced and was planned to be the game's final expansion, while production on Destiny 2 quietly began. Rise of Iron was well received, and the community eagerly anticipated Destiny 2 after its launch, which was poised to even have an esports scene until people realized that the game was still on the Tiger engine and would be using peer-to-peer connection. Now, I know when most people think of Destiny 2, especially PvP, nobody thinks of esports or anything like that, and that's because there have been so many fumbles over the years relating to Destiny's PvP. Most people attributed that to Activision, or the fact that Bungie would not switch off of the Tiger engine, but even after splitting from Activision, many of the issues with PvP stuck around. Destiny 2 launched in 2017 and was a massive disappointment on launch. The game felt incomplete with a lackluster story and sparse endgame content. Additionally, many of the subclass customization options from Destiny 1 had been cut down to small trees that had very few customization options and very few differences between them. Many people did not like this, along with the fact that instead of having a primary, special, and heavy weapon loadout, it was now double primary, and your heavy weapon included many special weapons from Destiny 1 and all of their archetypes, such as sniper rifles, fusion rifles, and shotguns. Nobody really felt like those should be in the heavy weapon slot, and this made PvP incredibly slow during the first year of the launch. Speaking of incredibly slow though, movement itself was also slowed down a lot, as well as just general playstyles. This made the game feel very boring and very tedious after a while. Destiny 2's launch was very rocky, but the first expansion that dropped for the game was a mini DLC much like the Dark Below and House of Wolves, and it ended up being received even worse than Dark Below. Curse of Osiris was the first expansion for Destiny 2. It was around $15, and it was, honestly, I would say it was worth $15, but it was still a huge letdown because people expected more and people wanted it to just breathe new life into the game that they really felt just could not have possibly shipped in its current state without any plan to massively overhaul things. But Curse of Osiris was a letdown, and Warmind, while not as bad as Curse of Osiris, still wasn't enough for most people to stick around. It wasn't until the Forsaken expansion dropped in 2018 that the game started to recover, as this was the second time that the game had been brought back from the dead. But even with the success of Forsaken, the game's reputation would be marred the following year with, the expansion that followed Forsaken, Shadowkeep, ended up being another misstep for the studio, where many people were upset by the fact that Shadowkeep just felt like an excuse to bring back content from Destiny 1, being the moon, and many of the nightmares that they added into the game were simply old bosses from Destiny 1 or from other missions that we played, and it just felt like they put a bunch of old stuff in the game with a shiny new coat of paint on it, while making Eris Morn give us some dialogue in the background. It also added the new seasonal model, which gave us 4 seasons per year. However, in 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic hit, and Bungie's split from Activision that was announced seemed like a fresh start for the studio. Pete Parsons seemed to be a hero for being a frontrunner in the work-from-home wave that swept the game dev industry at the time. Using things like Google Stadia, workers were able to finish Beyond Light from home with only a 3-month delay. However, Beyond Light came with some severe downsides. Beyond Light introduced sunsetting, which was sold to us as a way to cut down on space that the game might take up and make it so the game runs more smoothly. It removed many older items and many older activities from the game that people had already paid for. This rightfully upset many of the current players of the game, as it removed the entire vanilla campaign from Destiny 2, which was needed for new players to have context to what was going on in the story at the time. It also sunset Curse of Osiris and Warmind, which hadn't even been in the game very long. And yet, Bungie seemed to try and justify this at every turn. They also started sunsetting weapons and armor by making it so that after a full year of being in the game, they would be deprecated and no longer be able to work in higher end content. While a similar system happened in Destiny 1, it was considered something that people didn't really like, and it made it feel like the chase for new and top tier loot was very trivial. Additionally, one of the other problems with Beyond Light that many people still debate about to this day is the fact that Bungie seemed to have shipped it with 2 subclasses being so overpowered that were only available if you bought the new expansion that they just ruined Crucible for around 6 months. They were not nerfed until May 2021, and at that point people realized that they either needed to buy the expansion to compete with these subclasses or just gave up on playing PvP as a whole. This was a decision that some people thought was smart on Bungie's part, but many people still agreed was scummy to the overall player base, as well as the fact that even if you had the expansion, if you didn't want to play those subclasses, you'd be shit out of luck because there was nothing that could really compete with them that well. The Witch Queen expansion ended up getting delayed until February 2022 and introduced extra charges for content and a strange partial sunsetting of the beloved Forsaken expansion, much to the dismay of players. Yet, despite these issues, it was very well received for its narrative and gameplay. In July 2022, Sony acquired Bungie, including over $1 billion that was specifically allocated for talent retention. Bungie assured players and employees that no layoffs would occur and nobody would be moved to Sony Studios. Remember this because this would become Pete Parsons' biggest fuck-up. In 2023, Lightfall dropped, and it was another misstep for the studio. The story was weak, prices went up, and the game felt like more of a cash grab than ever. We still had the dungeon pass that was introduced with Witch Queen, and the expansion itself ended up being $10 more than Witch Queen, despite offering significantly less content. Many people try and justify this by saying that it included Strand, but Beyond Light included Stasis and was still cheaper than this, and didn't include anything like a dungeon pass at the time. Now, we weren't getting a guaranteed dungeon every other season with Beyond Light, but we still got more content in the overall story, and we still got better content with the overall story. Bungie was pouring many of the resources that were generated from Destiny into other projects, though. They had a rumored mobile game in development that was rumored to be either a hero shooter or an arena shooter that would focus on Destiny characters, and Marathon. The monetization strategies, including Eververse purchases and more silver-only cosmetics, were becoming unbearable. That combined with the newer event passes that you had to purchase in order to achieve more content from the seasonal events like Solstice, The Dawning, etc., were just pissing off most of the players because nobody felt like they should have to pay $10 to actually get something out of the free event that's supposed to keep people wanting to play. Now, granted, most of these were cosmetics, ghost shell projections, or shaders, sparrows, and ships, but that's still content that they could have given us for free, and they showed that they have the time and resources to develop stuff like that could have been put in the game. On top of all of the over monetization though, core game modes like Gambit and Crucible had not seen any new maps since Forsaken and had actually lost maps in Beyond Light due to sunsetting. Trials of Osiris and the competitive game modes had gone stale, and all of the changes made to PvP seemed to be made for the players who play for an hour or two every week and treat their 3 games of Crucible for a pinnacle reward like it's something cooked up by Unit 731 in World War II. A failed State of the Game address did little to quell concerns from the majority of players who had begun to vote with their wallets. The final shape suffered a dramatic drop in pre-orders, while an unscripted, honest video from the game's director, Joe Blackburn, had teased some promising fixes to the game. It still didn't feel like there was enough, given that there was no talk of reducing the over-monetization that was concerning so many players. On October 30th, 2023, Bungie laid off around 100 employees, including key figures like composer Michael Salvatore and community manager Dirty Effin' Hippie. This was due to missing revenue projections by 45% with Lightfall. Another issue around this time was the supposedly lackluster reaction to Marathon, a reboot of a previous game Bungie made in the 90s being brought back as a Tarkov-like extraction shooter that was helmed by the man who led the team that made Forsaken and arguably revived Destiny. At an event where Bungie flew a bunch of content creators out who played things like Tarkov, it ended with a question of, if Marathon launched tomorrow, how many of you would play it? Or something along those lines, and reportedly not a single hand went up. With these layoffs, a new person was appointed to lead the project, and it was then delayed to 2025. One question on everyone's minds about this whole situation was how were those laid off supposed to take the fallout for this? A filler expansion used to cover for a delay of another expansion that ended up being overpriced, overmonetized, and significantly underdeveloped does not seem to be something that falls on the developers, community managers, and composers, as opposed to the suits that make the business decisions for the company. More recently, it has been revealed that in the days leading up to these layoffs, good old Pete went up to employees to have them see his new car he purchased, one of many that he has now been found to have purchased between now and 2022 when the Sony acquisition occurred. His collection of cars now totals around $2.5 million. When asked if Bungie had considered cutting pay for suits and higher-ups due to this primarily being their fault, their response was simply that Bungie is not that kind of company. Most considered that to be a soulless response, and these layoffs came with an eventual announcement of a delay for the final shape by 4 months. Here is the list of Pete Parsons' car purchases, complete with prices and dates. 1973 Datsun 240Z for $34,000 on September 23, 2022. 1990 BMW M3 for $180,000 on October 6, 2022. A European 1973 BMW 3.0 CSI for $165,000 on October 14, 2022. A Porsche 911 SC Targa for $130,000 on October 14, 2022. Mercedes-Benz 280 SL for $95,000 on October 15, 2022. A Chevrolet Corvette convertible for $102,000 on December 12, 2022. A Jaguar XKE Series I 4.2 Roadster for $205,000 on December 23, 2022. A Chevrolet Corvette Coupe for $140,000 on February 18, 2023, to celebrate that banger Lightfall release. A 1966 BMW R62 for $22,000 on February 18, 2023. A 30-year-owned 1965 Porsche 356C Cabriolet for $235,000 on March 16, 2023. A Volkswagen Type 2 21-window sunroof deluxe for $91,500 on May 9, 2023. A Dodge Power Wagon from 1950 for $97,500 on May 13, 2023. A 1967 Shelby Mustang GT 500 Fastback. A 1958 BMW Isetta 300 for $42,750 on May 20th, 2023. A 1980 Toyota, I don't know how to pronounce that, OJ55 4-speed for $64,500 on May 24th, 2023. A 1951 Ford Country Squire for $46,500 on June 2nd, 2023. A 1958 Volkswagen Beetle sunroof sedan for $47,000 on June 2nd, 2023. Corvette C2 removable hardtop for $5,000 on July 30th, 2023. A 1963 BSA A10 Rocket Gold Star for $39,450 on August 13th, 2023. A 1972 Honda CT70 Trail for $5,600 on August 20th, 2023. A 390-powered 1969 Ford F-150 Ranger 4x4 for $79,000 on October 8th, 2023. This is possibly the car he bragged about to employees before he laid them off. A 1971 Porsche 911 S Coupe for $201,000 on November 22nd, 2023, likely bought to celebrate the layoffs. 1960 Morris Mini Minor Deluxe for $33,750 on December 21st, 2023, probably to make himself feel better because people on the internet just don't understand how hard it is to be so shit at running a company. And then finally, a 1966 Ford Bronco Roadster for $60,500 on December 29th, 2023. I'll give him this one because the new Broncos are shit and the old ones are very nice, but Pete Parsons is still a jackass. This list isn't just a display of luxury, it's a glaring symbol of a CEO who's utterly disconnected from the reality of the company he's running into the ground. In April 2024, Bungie announced Into the Light, a mini event that would lead into the Final Shape expansion, which ended up receiving universal acclaim and generated a ridiculous amount of revenue for the company in the month of June 2024. It even surpassed the likes of Roblox, GTA 5, and Valorant for that month. Yet barely a month later, Bungie laid off another 220 employees. This does not include the 155 being shuffled to other Sony studios and the 75 to a brand new studio. Parsons described this as a sad day, then most likely hopped into one of his 20 cars and fucked right off to do whatever selfish assholes do to cope with their actions. This whole situation is a masterclass in corporate greed and mismanagement. Parsons and the other suits are more interested in their bottom line than in the company's health or welfare of its employees. They ignored player feedback and neglected the core game and made decisions that hurt everyone except themselves. Pete Parsons' time as CEO is kind of like if you moved into a house that had a lemon tree in the background where you never took care of the tree but gathered all the lemons. If bugs start killing the tree but there's still fresh lemons on the branches, you'd probably want to find a way to kill the bugs and make it so the tree keeps producing lemons in the future, right? That's what a good homeowner would do. Or would you want to just take the remaining lemons and let it die because you know that you're probably going to be moving out of this house soon enough anyway, and you're not going to be able to keep that lemon tree forever? That's basically what Pete Parsons ended up doing. Now, I'd say worse about him, but I kind of need this video to stay monetized because I still need a new car. If you stuck around this long, thanks for watching. Bungie is filled with incredible talent, but it's led by a bunch of greedy, out-of-touch executives that truly have no actual care for the future of this studio. This isn't just about Destiny or Bungie, though. This is something that's happening with many studios across the entire game industry. It's a warning about what happens when corporate greed goes unchecked in even some of the most positive-seeming environments. Fuck Pete Parsons and anyone who thinks these layoffs are justified. This could have been avoided with better management and genuine care for the company's future. It has also been announced that Destiny is no longer going to be doing major expansions going forward, and instead are going to be smaller content drops that require fewer people and less time to develop. And with that being said, I don't really know where the future of the game is going. I don't know if I'm going to keep making just Destiny videos or if I'm going to be making other videos as well. But I would love to hear what you guys think about this in the comments below. Are you guys still going to be holding out hope for the game to get better at some point? Do you guys think Pete should resign? I feel like that's a bit of a rhetorical question. It kind of makes sense that he does, but there's still been a couple of jackasses on Twitter defending him or calling people jealous for criticizing him, so I just figured I'd ask that and see what you guys think, and I will catch you guys later.